Nearly half the season is over for fantasy football. You're either trying to pad your lead or claw your way back into contention. I'm here to help you improve your chances. Here are my top 5 waiver pickups for week 7. These are players who are owned in 50% or less of most leagues. Number 1, Cameron Meredith, wide receiver, Chicago Bears. I told you to pick him up last week, and he went off a second time in a monster game with 11 catches for 113 yards. He has an easier matchup again this next week against Green Bay. He's clearly someone Brian Hoyer trusts, so if he's still available, go get him. Number 2, Jay Ajayi, running back for Miami Dolphins. I've always been impressed with Ajayi since his hard running days at Boise State, but his injury issues led to a difficult transition into the NFL. Sunday's display, 204 yards and 2 TDs, shows what he can do, even with Arian Foster back in the mix. Even if Foster plays more as he gets healthier, just remember, Foster is injured a lot. Number 3, Kenny Britt, wide receiver, LA Rams. The Rams quarterback, Case Keenum, is surprising people. At one point this past week, he completed 19 consecutive passes. His favorite receiver is turning out to be Kenny Britt, who had 136 yards and 2 TDs on Sunday. This isn't a one-week fluke either. He's had 75 receiving yards or more in 4 of his last 5 games. He's on pace to go over the 1,000-yard mark for the season. And next week he gets a giant squad who's in the bottom third of giving it passing yards. Number 4, James White, running back, Patriots. His value has skyrocketed since the return of Brady, and he should be worth starting going forward in PPR leagues. Since Brady's return, White has hauled in 12 passes for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. His next matchup comes against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are struggling on defense. And number 5, Hunter Henry, tight end, Chargers. He isn't going away, folks, even with Antonio Gates back. Henry led the Chargers in catches, targets, and yards in Week 6. Plus, he scored for the 3rd straight game. For a position that's hard to find good production, Henry lands in the top 5 for tight ends this year, and he's only about 1/3 owned in fantasy leagues. I want to talk to you about stashing players. Stashes are players who won't pay immediate dividends but could be great adds for your bench to use in the coming weeks and in the playoffs, especially if you have a winning record. So here are my top 5 stashes for week number 7. Number 1 is Dion Lewis, wide receiver of the Patriots. He's eligible to start practicing this week. However, he may not see action until November. Lewis was a difference maker for the Patriots prior to his injury last year. He could be a game changer in fantasy come playoff time if he regains his old role. Number 2 is Ladarius Green, tight end for the Steelers. Green has been out all season, but he's expected to begin practicing this week, and he could be back on the field soon. The Steelers paid Green a lot of money this offseason, so when he's ready, he'll be a big part of the NFL's most explosive offense. Stash him now, as Green has the potential to really stretch the field and be a red zone threat for the Steelers. Number 3, Jaquiz Rodgers, running back of the Buccaneers. Rodgers impressed with 35 touches and 125 total yards in Week 5. And even though Doug Martin is expected to return in Week 7, Rodgers will still be involved as Tampa's primary receiving back. If Martin re-injures his hamstring, Rodgers would have instant running back 2 value. Number 4 is Mike Gillislee, the running back for the Bills. LaShawn McCoy returned from what looked to be a pretty serious leg injury in Week 6 before he racked up even more yards. But Gillislee looked great as well, with McCoy running so much because the Bills are committed to the run this year. If he should get injured this next week or beyond, Gillislee would play a huge role. He is worth picking up. Number 5, Corey Coleman, wide receiver for the Browns. Coleman is coming up on an early end of his timetable to return from a Week 2 injury. There hasn't been much news on his recovery, but it's realistic to expect him back within the next 3 weeks. We saw what he can do in Week 2 when he went for 104 yards and 2 TDs, so he's not a bad stash for later in the season. Down below in my written blog, I'll give you some great one-week pickups based on excellent matchups, plus a few more players who are trending up that you may want to consider. Hey, good luck in this coming week.